On this day in 1939, Detective Comics number 27 was published. For the low price of 10 cents, a copy of this comic could be bought. And the comic, the first appearance of Batman. The creators, Bob Kane and Bill Finger, could not have known the great success that they would publish, and that comic is now worth over $1 million. Time and time again, Batman is voted the world's most popular superhero. And it is no surprise with incredible comic book arcs such as The Long Halloween, Year One, A Death in the Family, The Killing Joke, The Dark Knight Returns. The list goes on, especially due to the expertise of the writers. Writers that are legends such as Frank Miller, Paul Dini, and Scott Snyder. Plus, over the years, as Batman has evolved, characters such as Robin have also been created, and not even just one version, but multiple, each with their own unique characteristics. Variations in the allies have been ever present, and the flow of creativity never stops. For instance, Nightwing, Red Hood, Robin, Batgirl, and Alfred, aka the Bat Family. Of course, it goes without saying that Batman's success goes hand in hand with a truly spectacular rogues gallery. This was excellently presented over the past decade, with Arkham Asylum released almost 10 years ago, actually just over 500 weeks ago today. I'm actually hopeful for a release this year, #Arkham 2019, but that's another story. From Solomon Grundy to Scarecrow, from Killer Moth to the Court of Owls, there's a whole host of diversity when it comes to the villains of Batman. Both backgrounds and motives differ wildly, which is why there are some wacky villains and other more savage villains, but mostly the villains are well thought out with complex yet easy to understand personal histories and motives, allowing for a natural sense of relatability. What you've been seeing on your screen is some of my favourite gameplay from the Arkham series. I decided to ask the Batman community what their favourite things about the franchise are, and there was one comment that stood out. Throughout the Arkham series, but particularly in the earlier games, the writing is impressive, making the stories more memorable. It may possibly even be on par with the comic book arcs. There are plenty of emotional character beats, and the plot moves organically, especially in Arkham City. There are very few points where an event occurs for convenience sake, which really highlights the power of an interactive storytelling experience, and this is made all that much better when you realize that Arkham Asylum was the first ever AAA superhero video game. Rocksteady really developed a thrilling story with a version of Batman unique to them through their 3 games, each rightfully earning a well-deserved Game of the Year award. Even WB's Arkham Origins, which in popular opinion is the worst game in the series, had some good character moments, especially when Batman saves the Joker, and also when we see the origins of Joker and Harley Quinn, despite the conflict with Rocksteady canon. In fact, the writing was so good that some great mini-stories were available in Arkham City. Interview tapes and extortion files were rewarding and made further use of some terrific voice actors.
He's crazy, you know.
Who? Batman?
No, Santa Claus. Of course, Batman. Always Batman. I've seen it in his eyes. Screaming mad stalkers. And dishonest. Hiding his face behind a fright mask. Well, no masks for me. I have nothing to hide. I laugh at the cruel absurdity of the world. But Batman, he's got them all fooled. He's made them think he can make a difference, that he can actually make things better. And the joke of it is, they all believe it.
The police?
The police, the media, the frickin' junior rangers. Every last sack of walking meat in this urban cesspool. Listen, sweets. Batman knows we're all on the same funhouse slide into madness. Why won't he admit it? He's up there in his belfry laughing at us. And the real gag is the miserable liar is allowed to run free while I'm in here.
That's really incisive.
Then you understand, don't you? You know why I do what I have to do. You know Gotham's only real savior is me.
In each game, the database enriches the character development without over-reliance on canon. Probably my favourite is Arkham Knight or City, based on the interview tapes or Joker's voice messages, but even the interview tapes in Arkham Asylum are cool to listen to. Kevin Conroy encapsulates the role of the Bat, just as Mark Hamill makes a genuinely amazing Joker. Every voice actor gave a strong sense of energy to their respective roles, more so than in other video games. And that's the point. The Arkham series is not just a great superhero video game, but an extraordinary game, and a wonderful medium for the Batverse. It really takes advantage of comic book arcs and the rich history, not just through a variety of skins, but hundreds of Easter eggs that really do make the video game series more immersive. 2 years were spent just on animating the cape of the Batsuit, ensuring that it moved realistically. Even the controls make you feel like Batman, from fighting to navigating through the gothic yet somewhat breathtaking city, whether gliding in the air, instantly diving to the ground, or driving along the wide roads. Never before had navigation felt more open in a video game world, with freedoms throughout the city. Especially in Arkham City, every building, every tower or rooftop is there for a reason within the game, whether it is for a story mission, a side mission, or for general fun in navigation in which the only major change is the addition of a grapnel boost system, making for a more exciting and new open world playground than that of Arkham Asylum, released just 2 years before. This allowed for the integration of different parts of the video game into a thoroughly enjoyable, consistent, and thereby believable whole.
Of the bodysuit are made of a titanium dip tri-weave. It's between those layers where things get interesting. Wayne Tech MR fluid hardens in response to impact. With this kind of shock absorption, you'll be able to put more force into your counterattacks. The liquid armor's more flexible than the fibers you're accustomed to as well. You can use that increased maneuverability to take out multiple foes in quick succession. The suit's compatible with the Batmobile's electromagnetic eject mechanism too. You'll fly out of that thing like a bullet from a railgun. Speaking of which, the new grapnel launcher will pull you skyward just as fast. Don't worry, Mr. Wayne. That suit can take the G's. How's it feel, Mr. Wayne? I've activated the AR training program should you want to run diagnostics, or just break it in.
Rocksteady redefined combat, first in Arkham Asylum, and then again in Arkham City, making use of this creative system for all situations, whether it be fighting the thugs of a supervillain or the supervillain themselves. I personally loved how there was a whole range of tactics at my disposal for both close combat encounters and takedowns as a predator. It really made me feel like I was Batman, and did not feel restricted in any unintended way. The sheer efficiency with which Batman could clear rooms was surely a spectacle to behold, with the ability to use stealth, traps, and takedowns due to a variety of enemies. The fear takedowns in Arkham Knight were so powerful and made me feel like the Bat. There were even some fantastic takedowns to be used in combat, making use of the free flow gameplay mechanic and gadgets for every situation. Gadgets were a great joy to use throughout the series, particularly explosive gel, the remote hacking device, smoke pellets, and of course the signature batarangs. Boss fights also had a sense of ingenuity about them, forcing players to think tactically rather than button smashing. This is present in every game, but the highlight must be the Mr. Freeze boss fight in Arkham City, where Victor will change his tactics after you exploit a takedown move, and thereby forces the player to change their own tactics. This is even present in standard combat, with armored enemies, enemies with stun buttons, armed enemies, and even the tanks in Arkham Knight. Speaking of the tanks, The Batmobile was a delight in the final game, with its variety of functions, including the power winch to climb up and down walls, and its ejectability to shoot you up into the sky where you can glide around the city. It was awesome to see Batman evening the odds and turning the car into a tank. Even the smaller details were pretty cool, like the treads, which were in the shape of bats.
Go, go, go! We've got the target, sir. He's cornered. Don't move!
Are you sure it's him?
Confirmed, it's Batman.
Sir, that tank they have backing them up is unmanned.
Good. I thought this would be tough. Well, it took...
60mm cannon operational. Fire suppressor engaged.
The Batwing was a small highlight of Origins. Although unable to fly the Batwing, a quick cutscene would play as you fast travel from the interactive Batcave, which was home to many lovely Easter eggs, and a mission later in the game, to another location in snowy Gotham. The developers also had inventive designs for side missions, particularly for the two most disorienting characters, Mad Hatter and Scarecrow. Players were immersed either in the insanity of Wonderland or the nightmarish world of Scarecrow. Even in Asylum, Rocksteady created a simply special moment in the middle of the story where the player's console appears to crash. This definitely got me the first time, of course, never having played or seen this scene before, along with this entertaining part of the story.
Someone help me! Keep those mouths shut! Batman!
Hey, sweetums, you're gonna miss the party!
You have to listen to me! It's a mistake! I didn't do it!
Just got to check your prisoner, dear.
Whatever. Just be quick. He's not looking too good.
No, he's not. We really should feel sorry for him. He never fully got over his parents' death. It left him quite insane. What is going on inside your head, Wayne? He's gone. Just a twisted shell of a man.
Cut me free!
He's all yours, Joker.
Oh, goody. Come on, Mr. J, we're ready.
I've waited a long time for this, Bats. Let's start the party with a bang.
But it's not just the combat that makes you feel like the Bat. Crime scenes were quite enjoyable. Players became the Bat, using his detective skills to solve a crime, and this was best used in Arkham Origins, piecing together items at the crime scene, or sometimes at multiple crime scenes, in order to solve a mystery. And this is yet another way in which Batman was realized for the gaming medium effectively, as he is the world's greatest detective. This was also done well in City, but more for the mysteries than the gameplay. Another way to show the expertise of Bats was with riddles and trophies, which was surprisingly fun, even when I got to the ones that required skill and required me to solve puzzles, some of which were fiendishly difficult. Riddler rooms in City may have been the best part of the Riddler's arc. This is made all the more satisfying when the Riddler is finally defeated. Secret rooms were also hidden very well into the games and are cool to enter. Calendar Man also appeared in Arkham City, and depending on the day, certain conversations could be triggered.
How much do I need to hurt you? That was never in doubt.
The day set aside for St. Patrick, the holy man who drove the snakes from Ireland. Interesting thing about snake venom, Batman. Some are green, just like the dye used to make green beer. That made it all the easier when I hosted that St. Patty's Day party for my old gang. As you remember, one of my henchmen tried to tip you off. I wasn't sure which one had done it, so I decided to punish them all. 1 dose of green mamba venom into the beer keg, and they were soon rotting under the shamrocks. So I guess that makes you responsible for their deaths, too. I'll drink to that.
The creativity did not stop there either. If the bat lost all of his health, a short scene would play before prompting the player to retry. But what played as the scene was usually some fun. First of all, a relevant villain for whichever mission you failed would walk up to the camera, looking down at the implied body of Batman. This would be followed up by a line of speech, either congratulating themselves on killing the bat, or noting how easy it was to kill him. As a tactic, seeing this happen many times at a certain point in the story spurs the player on to beat the enemy. It's so simple, yet effective. But my favourite situations for this have to be the Joker's lines.
Come on, Bruce. You can't die. I didn't kill you.
The game would also reward progress with beautiful concept art of Gotham, in-game items, and characters. Just as the writers created fantastic stories, Nick Arundel produced some stirring and sensational scores. His soundtrack for Arkham City is widely regarded as one of the most brilliant video game soundtracks ever produced. Unsurprisingly, when you listen to tracks such as Wham!, Gotcha, You Should Have Listened to My Warning, and even the main theme, Arkham Knight's soundtrack can also be a thrill to listen to, especially Fear Within, All Who Follow You, and Invasion. The soundtracks for Arkham Asylum and Origins, composed by Ron Fish and Christopher Drake, also worked well as ambient music for the game, adding a further sense of atmosphere. Here, you can hear the music of Night, taken from the start of the game.
It took just 24 hours for us to lose control of the city. Tonight, Gotham's relying on one man to save us all.
Moving on to the endings of the video games, Arkham City's ending was shocking. Shockingly good. I won't spoil it here, but I thought it was both powerful and emotional, using the suspense built up through the game effectively. The ending of Night brought everything from the series together and was ambiguous enough to let the player make their own conclusions. It was emotionally compelling, and I thought that it was quite a satisfying ending after 4 games. Duality is common in the Batverse. When it comes to characters such as Two-Face, it's obvious, but it's also quite rewarding when you realise the duality between Bats and the Joker, or Red Hood, or the Arkham Knight. Or even the similarities between Batman and Scarecrow, tackling the universal theme of fear. Despite the negative reception, I feel that Arkham Knight did a great job of showcasing this, and even Origins to an extent. The main villain, the Arkham Knight, made such an impact on DC that he is being recognized in Detective Comics 1000. And of course, Arkham City had the symbolic painting of Kane and Abel. Rocksteady did well to build on the foundation of the comics when it came to humanizing the enemies. This was at least in part due to the canonical Joker's line and belief of one bad day. This carries through with other villains in the huge rogues gallery. But for the other villains, there is a motive to which the audience can relate. For instance, Poison Ivy is really just an environmentalist gone rogue, and the audience can relate to this. Likewise, Mr. Freeze just wanted to save his wife, but in the process turned to crime to raise funds. Even the more unusual and obscure villains, like Man-Bat, can be found to be relatable through Man-Bat's production of a well-intended treatment for deafness gone wrong. The supervillains of Batman are not just super in their abilities, but also in how society can relate to their noble motives, achieved through sometimes nefarious and usually corrupt methods. Personally, I found Mr. Freeze to have one of the most emotional and sorrowful arcs throughout the Arkham series, with a tear-jerking finale in Arkham Knight. It was extremely well written, with a poignant and powerful end to his story arc. It's definitely worth experiencing that DLC for yourself. In 1993, the first Batman animated movie was released, The Mask of the Phantasm. Incorporating elements of mystery and action, some reported it to be an improvement on the live-action films of the past, particularly Batman Forever and even Batman Returns. This marked the start of a long tradition of Batman animated movies, which continues to this day, with an excellent host of voice actors, each giving phenomenal performances, though none as brilliant as Hamill or Conroy, in my opinion. The animated movies are usually well-produced pieces of art. The nature of these movies also allows for genuinely emotional moments and scenes that can beat those of most live-action movies, along with some good soundtracks. 3 of the best films are Under the Red Hood and The Dark Knight Returns, which work better as animated movies rather than live action. There is a uniqueness in the superb storytelling which lends itself quite well to these animated movies. In terms of live action movies, however, the soundtracks tend to be outstanding. Danny Elfman made an exceptional theme in the 1989 film and would go on to compose for the Batman animated series. His soundtrack stands out to me as the most iconic Batman theme, as it left its mark in history. It was even used for the LEGO Batman games, which were fun to play through. Another musical legend has worked on all of the modern films, Hans Zimmer. While keeping his rhythmic trademark, Zimmer's soundtrack for the Bale trilogy could never really beat the score of Elfman in my opinion, but it was still an epic soundtrack. Zimmer even came back to produce the score for the Batman vs Superman film, which also stands up on its own as a dark and gothic soundtrack, encapsulating the new darker Batfleck, and the general consensus of online fans is that Zimmer's soundtracks are more relevant for the modern age of Batman. What the soundtracks of the live-action films have in common is that they fit the action sequences well, especially with the Nolan and Burton trilogies. The films have excellent combat cinematography, particularly in the Nolan trilogy, and gadgets have been creatively used since the 1989 film 30 years ago. For as long as Batman has used his gadgets in films, the Batmobile has been present in many variations, whether it is the fully armoured classic 1989 version, or the beast of a car from the Nolan trilogy, or even the sleek 1960s Batmobile of Adam West. The Bat Signal has also gone through many changes over the years, specifically due to the change in the iconography of the Bat, while keeping the essence of the character contained within. 46 years after the cancellation of a fourth season of the 1960s TV series, a new Bruce Wayne came to the small screen in the TV show Gotham, exploring the origins of the Bat. Oftentimes, people say that Batman's origin story is overdone by Hollywood, but it's not iconic because they keep telling it. They keep telling the story because it's iconic.
Stay where you are. I'll shoot.
I'll give you whatever you want.
Tom! Oh God, Tom!
Be quiet, lady. Just shut up. Give
Stay
me.
away from me! Run! Mommy!
Come on, kid, this way. Take a seat in my office.
Is he okay?
He'll be fine. A kid like that with all that money, he'll be just fine.
Shut up, now. He's 8 years old and all alone. Money won't fix that.
Whatever you say, Gordon. His butler's on his way to pick him up. You hear that? He's got a butler.
I'm sorry about that. I just need to ask you some questions. Can I get you anything? You okay? I know you don't feel like answering me, but it's the only way to catch who did this.
Please, you an officer. Why?
I don't know. It's this city. There's something. And listen, son. Call me Jim.
It is often a joy to see the Joker or Batman on the big screen too, especially with actors including Michael Keaton, Christian Bale, Heath Ledger, and Jack Nicholson. I guess we're lucky that the Clown Prince of Crime was not killed off as originally intended in the comics, but was kept due to huge support of the character. While he is a wacky character with a magnificent possible origin as the Red Hood, he is underrated as a genius in terms of his contraptions and gadgets, leading to fun combat and chase scenes throughout his history. The ambiguity of his origins has led to a truly adaptable villain of many talents, and he can change with ease to suit different stories, such as the difference between the Joker in The Killing Joke and the Joker in the Dark Knight trilogy. This is the pure intelligence and innovation behind what would have been a one-off character, and he has grown to be one of the best villains, not just from the rogues gallery of Batman, but of all time. Of course, there are things that I will have missed out in this video, such as the timelessness of Gotham, and I cannot do justice to the Dark Knight. But what I have spoken of, I hope, gives you an idea of why Batman has and will continue to be such a popular character with a rich history and universe. Batman's ultimate aim is to improve society, and that can be through the political and charitable work of Bruce Wayne, or the vigilantism, and of course, the genius detective work of the Bat. And in this way, the character is a metaphor of the good in our society, the willingness to make our world better, but also the desire to take criminals off our streets. Vigilantism is not just the violent dispatch of criminals, but can be defined as the action of people organizing themselves to fight for a common purpose, be it liberty or even to protect existing laws. There are countless cases of vigilantism for a good purpose by this definition, especially in America in the 20th century, or even going as far back as the Boston Tea Party in the 18th century. Whether it is moral or not is up to you, but it is undeniable, in cases such as the ones aforementioned, that vigilantism has played some part in leading to the freedom of rights. And this is why the violent but usually non-lethal vigilantism of Batman strikes at the heart of society. Batman does what he does to improve Gotham in ways that Bruce Wayne cannot. And to think that Batman was created in 1939, 80 years ago today, yet the analogy still holds true. That was the genius of Bob Kane and Bill Finger. The creation of the most popular superhero of all time, even 20 years after the death of Kane. Which is why we spend today, and Batman Day later this year, celebrating not just Batman as a character, but the genius of Bob Kane and Milton Bill Finger. After 80 years of monumental comic book arcs, films, games, and more, with an immeasurable influence on multiple generations, the legend of the Batman lives on.